But I think it really is just having that open mind and tweaking your checklist slightly, or maybe going with no list at all. Because I think for my husband, I wouldn't have found him if I'd worked off my checklist, and also to have faith. Because when I met him, he's like, I'm looking for something serious. And I really wasn't, because I'm a few years younger than him. But I told him and I responded, I said, I am open to it. It's not something I'm saying like I'm signed up for, but I'm open to it. And I think that was the most ironic thing, was like going from saying like, I don't want to be married by 35 to getting married before 30, simply because I met the right person that satisfied certain needs that I needed versus wants. So that's what I would recommend to people, is like having an open mind when they go into the dating experience.
Welcome to the Asian Dating Podcast. I'm your host, May Bugenhagen. I am the founder of Two Asian Matchmakers, which is a boutique matchmaking company in Los Angeles. Now help men all across the US find a great Asian partner. Today, my guest on the show, Anna Ren. She is the founder of Journey 180. Journey 180 creates self-care planners and other products that focus on self-love, self-care, and productivity. Her goal is to help others become the best versions of themselves through reflecting on their past, appreciating the present, and getting excited for their future. You can learn more about Anna and her products at journey180planner.com, and I'll put all that in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Anna. How are you?
Thank you so much, May. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I love when Asian guests come on the show so I can ask them questions about Asian dating and all that good stuff. Now, tell me about how you found your partner, your Asian partner, and how was dating life for you?
What a great question. So, yes, like as you mentioned, my partner is Asian. And that was actually a really big surprise, because growing up, I had grown up in a town that was predominantly Caucasian or other races, but we were like one of the very few Asian families there. And so, they talk about nature versus nurture, but I'd grown up with a very mixed crowd. And as a result, my dating life was also anything but Asian, if that makes sense. So I dated mostly Caucasian men, um, but more so because that's what I was surrounded by and comfortable with, whether that was through college and into the real world. And so when I told people like about my future partner, I was getting engaged. First of all, that was a shock, because I think we had been dating officially maybe 6 months when we got engaged, and known each other maybe 9 months when we got engaged. So a lot of people thought I was like losing my mind, like I had gotten knocked up, just because like no partner of mine had ever lasted actually more than like 3 months before I met my husband. And so and then they meet him and they're really surprised because he's not Caucasian. Because my history had been like Caucasian men, very tall, usually like 6 feet something. Don't know why. And here he is. He's from China, and he'd grown up there and lived there most of his life before coming here for graduate school. But we met speed dating in New York City. We're both in the tri-state area, and it was just the funniest thing because I'd done other speed dating things before, and I enjoyed them. It felt like it's really good practice for interviewing. If you're looking for a job, I would put that out there. But I'd attended a few different speed dating events too before, in terms of like, because I graduated from Georgetown. So there's like different types of speed dating events, whether it's by age or like background or things. But this was the first one I'd done just to meet other Asian men. And I never done that before. I went with a friend. He'd gone with a bunch of his friends, and we were each other's first dates. And he just tells me, he's like, I just remember you asked the hardest questions. I had never dated anyone like more than 3 months before, but I think it is because I want to know really quickly if we're going to click or not. And also if I can see a future with you. So I went straight in with the non negotiables. I don't know if that's how most women should do it or men should do it when they're doing a speed dating event, but that's how I did it. And as a result, I was pretty memorable, apparently.
What was the tough questions you asked? Give me an example of your speed dating interview question.
Yeah. I think the first question I asked him was, what is your favorite memory? And it definitely stumped him a little bit, but I learned a little bit more about his values, and it was that it was a memory he shared with his grandfather that had passed away. And I learned so much a little bit about him that would be meaningful for me and my values. The other question I asked is like, what is your ultimate goal in life? And the funny thing is, like being in New York City, tri state, everyone talks about career typically, or amassing a certain amount of wealth. And he's like, I just really want to have a family that is happy and healthy. And that caught me off guard. So it was really interesting because I think for our first date, and it's like 5 minutes, I think, we were catching each other off guard. And in that sense, you're being memorable. I mean, we're also being very authentic. And then I think the other one was like, what was your favorite movie? And he said Butterfly Effect, I think it was. And that was also not something I was expecting as well. But I think my favorite one was probably the memory, and kind of like what is your goal in life? And it told me so much about his character.
Now, Anna, how tall are you?
I am 5'3".
And
I
you
don't know,
used to
is
go
that
out with
considered
guys
tall or not tall?
you used to go out with guys that are over 6 feet tall, and how tall is your husband?
He's about 5'7".
Okay. Okay, so did height play any did height matter when you were selecting him at the end of
I
speed
think
dating?
it did at first, if that makes sense. But I think it was also like when I approached dating, I wasn't looking, this is going to sound weird. I wasn't looking to settle down. And so my husband really caught me off guard. Like I had talked with a friend before, a very attractive, good male friend of mine. And he was like, hey, if we're both not married by like, 30, let's get together. And I was like, I definitely won't be married by 30. I don't want to be married at all. So like if I'm going to do this, I'll say 35, right? Like kind of like my best friend's wedding pact. Um, but yeah, I think it actually didn't bother me that he was not, maybe if he was like 5'9", that would have been nice. But dating really tall guys that range from like 6 feet to 6'5", it's actually harder. It's weird. It doesn't fit together as much. Like when you're holding hands, or you're trying to do any other physical activity, sometimes it's odd, but it doesn't fit as well. So it's really interesting because like I think a lot of times women have these check boxes, or men have these check boxes too, in terms of, hey, what do I want in a partner? And then it was interesting because I think I didn't go in with any check boxes when I met him. And I like to say that um, someone out there, a power, knew what I needed more than what I wanted. And that's kind of maybe why it worked out.
I liked how you said that speed dating is a great way for you to prep if you go in for a job interview, because it's kind of the same thing where you're talking to maybe 10 or 15 or 20 people a night, right? And
Yes.
for me, I used to do a lot of speed datings, and I've had a lot of success stories with people matching up with people and meeting them kind of organically, right? In front of them and chatting for 4 or 5 minutes. And you really get a sense for what they're like, their energy, if they make eye contact, if they're a little bit awkward, which is fine because who
Mhm.
wants somebody who's totally smooth all the time? Like, they're like a professional dater. You don't want to be with someone like that. So I love speed datings for that reason. It's like you're going out 10 or 15, 20 first dates in one night. You only have to get dressed up once and put on your makeup once and do your hair once. Right. So I'm a big fan of speed datings. I did a lot of them before the pandemic and I haven't done them since, but hopefully one day I'll get back to that. But when you went to the speed dating, did you go in there thinking that, you know what, I might meet someone great. I might just have fun. I just might talk. I'm an extrovert. I just want to like enjoy myself. Like, what was your mentality when you went into the speed dating?
I think I was just looking to have fun. I'm actually an introvert. So if people follow Myers-Briggs, I'm a INFJ.
Mhm.
So, but I really like connecting with people, like on a one-on-one level. So speed dating kind of works in that regard. So I think I was just looking with my friend, like, hey, let's just go have fun this weekend in New York and like, let's just go see, not really expecting to meet anyone. And what was funny was like, so for speed dating, you check off the people you're interested in, right? You don't necessarily know their names. It's like a number or something. And so I checked off mine and I didn't get his contact information. I got like all of the people I checked except for him and then some random person who I didn't remember. And they had just mixed it up in the administrative side of the speed dating. But thankfully, he got my information. And so he reached out to me. And so we were still able to hit it off, but it was just funny in that regard. And I think the other thing people don't realize is they think like, oh, 5 minutes is so short. How can you possibly get to know someone in 5 minutes? I'm telling you, depending on who you meet, 5 minutes can seem very long. Like you're like, hit the bell, hit the bell. I'm ready for the next one. So I think it's great in that regard because you can like you don't have to sit through a very painful 1 hour date, right? With someone necessarily. You get to figure out if do I want to see this person again? And then you can arrange something longer. So it just started out as a night of fun though. That's all it was.
Now, you're very Americanized. You were born in the US and you happen to marry someone who is not West or not Americanized in that sense, wasn't born here. He has an accent. He's from China. You're from Taiwan. Like, how did you feel when you introduced him to your parents and your other friends? Like, what was going through your mind?
It was definitely no hesitation when it came to my friends. And some like my friends will say, like, sometimes you don't think things through, Anna. Like you bring people around like right after a second date. And you don't have necessarily any interest in keeping things going with someone, but you'll just like introduce people. So I don't like and I think I invited him to my college reunion. Like we'd only been dating a month. So it's like those things don't cross my mind. And my friends are used to that. And they actually took bets on my husband when they met him. They're like, before he arrived at the restaurant, they're like, I bet this one lasts like 4 months. That's it.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, joke's on you. I married this guy. And then my parents was the harder part because of that, Taiwan, China dynamic. And, when my mom met him at first, and he knows this, so it's not going to catch him by surprise, but she's like, I don't understand why you're dating this guy. He's so different from everyone else. Obviously, he's not white. They, I think, really expected us to end up with someone who is white, tall, the usual, like from a certain background too. Um, but I told my mom, I was like, just give it some time. I think you're gonna see why I like this one, and why I think he's gonna stay. And it really is, he is very genuine, and I think he's very thoughtful. And hadn't really met someone as thoughtful as him. And we like to joke, but like our first real date was dim sum, and he let me pick. And so I always like it when guys let me choose things. So I picked dim sum because it's like low. Like I always feel like there's a lot of pressure if a guy takes you on an expensive date, right? But with dim sum, it's like more casual, and so you can just feel it out. But like for example, I'd been on like my mom had tried to match make me with someone, and it was over dim sum, and like literally the guy didn't even ask if anyone wanted the last piece of something and just took it, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. And so, but with my husband, we both love eggplant. I don't know why, but he just he just let me have it. He's like, no, no, you have it. And he still does that to this day. Like for the most part, he gives in a bit more and he compromises a bit more, except for certain things that he really cares about. And I think that's what makes our marriage work to a degree. Is like you can't always win in a relationship, right? It's kind of like balance in that regard. But then like my mom over time saw how thoughtful he was. Like even the dog liked him, and the dog doesn't like anyone. And my dad, like he was out of the country when my husband and I met. And so like he came back and like maybe met my dad like a month before we got engaged. Um, I didn't know when we were getting engaged, but like it happened around that. And my dad definitely had these preconceived notions as well, coming from China. and about that certain region of China. And he's like, oh, he's gonna be a trickster or liar or all this stuff. And he realized like my husband's nothing like that. And it's really interesting because like we had interesting family dynamics before. And I don't know, like maybe you talk about this in some of your other episodes, but like how family and upbringing plays into like the dating world as well. Um, but it was really interesting because it didn't like, if this makes any sense, he not only like created a really great family and relationship for the two of us, but he also helped kind of heal and make my family, like my parents' side, better as well. Less fights and like a new perspective on what family is. So I'm very grateful for that. And I knew that to a degree when I like heard about his family. And like after I met him and I was like, I married you for your family. You guys all get along. You're all happy together. I married you for your family. But he knows that as well.
I think it's so important for you to get along with your in-laws and for your husband to get along with your family. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of stress in a relationship. I mean, relationships are tough between two people, let alone getting everybody involved with your relationship and family and holidays and all that stuff. But I really love what you said about recognizing that he was kind and genuine and willing to ask, hey, do you want the last piece, and give you the last piece or insist that you take the last piece, because these are some of the things that you don't necessarily realize or you take for granted, right? Like we assume we want to be with a partner who's kind, generous, and caring and all that. But for you to actually see that and appreciate that, same thing with same sex friendships, right? Like you probably have girlfriends that you're really close to because you recognize what a genuine person they are and not shady or not,
Yes.
manipulative or narcissist or anything like that. So I really feel like people should, when they're dating, look for people that they are proud to bring home and that they're not embarrassed to bring home. Like they're kind and sincere, and that you'll see for yourself once you meet them. Like, I think that's how you felt, was like, you know what? I know something deep down about what he's like, but I want you to get to know him and see those same great qualities that I saw in him. So that's awesome. I was reading something, that someone said, I wish I know the name of the person, but they said in any relationship that you're dating and that you're trying to get to know somebody, that you should always be the person to give more than receive, right? Like if you're focusing
Mhm.
on giving half the time or 80% of the time, then that person hopefully will make you a better person too, right? That you're both, I feel like, I know I'm rambling on, but I feel like
No, not at all.
my husband makes me a better person too, because I see how he is with his clients, with his vendors, and with his family. And then I see it, I learn it, and then I'm like, okay, I should do more of what he does. So I feel like that's how two people can really elevate their relationships with each other, by trying to mimic all the good qualities of each other, right?
Absolutely. It's in the little things. I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we think about all these big things we want. So whether they have a certain college degree, right? Or a certain title in their job. But I think it was really the little things with my husband. And that's, I think, why it works, if that makes sense. Um, so I was trying to think of something you said before that now it like kind of slipped my mind. But he I'm trying to think of how to put it, but he, like, changed my love language. If people, like, subscribe to the love language idea. So I used to be a romantic person, like, that was my love language. And my husband told me straight up, and I think this is very important in relationships too, is be who you are and tell your partner exactly who you are, right? So he told me straight up, I'm not a romantic person. And so going into that, I knew, okay, but I was like, that is something I'm willing to compromise on. And funnily enough, like when we first got married, we struggled a little bit, like because we were like, his love language is acts, I think it's called acts of service, maybe. where
Yeah.
he does the day-to-day little things, like the things you don't realize. So like there was only we barely fight. We've never really had a big fight ever. And I think it's because one of us always gives in. But one time early in our marriage, I think we got a little resentful of each other. And this is so stupid over dishes. Like, who's doing the dishes more? And then we had a talk, and I realized, and he was saying, like, his thing is acts of service, and he picks up around the house, right? He'll cook whenever he has the time, right? And then slowly that became my love language too. And so our marriage never became a scorecard. And I think that's so important in a relationship. Instead of saying, like, well, I did this and you should do that, it became like whoever can do it and we want to do it to help the other person out. And like, even when like I became a parent and like a mom, and you get even more overwhelmed, right? And I was able to tell him and communicate and say, hey, I'm drowning a bit here. Can you help a little bit more with XYZ? And he was able to say, like, yes, I can. I didn't know you were drowning, but thank you for letting me know so that I can step in and kind of like pick up a little bit and help you. So I think that was also very important, is we are good at communicating. And that kind of also makes our relationship a little better as well.
Yeah. I feel like everything can be solved with communication and
Yes.
with all levels of relationships, whether it's like you and your parents, or you and your kids, or you and a friend, or you and your husband. I mean, communication, I feel like there's no way to, it's not bad to over communicate, right? Like if you're just letting people know what's going on and filling them in on the day to day stuff, like you just can't go wrong. Like no one's ever going to say, Anna, I can't believe you just told me where you're going and what your plans are for the day. You're so annoying, right? Like, even if I updated you on my day to day plans for the day, you'd be like, okay, thanks for letting me know. But
Yeah.
you're going to be like, yo, you're so annoying for over communicating with me. So, yeah, yeah. Now, being, being single and now married, what are some dating tips you have for the Asian women out there who maybe did always date the Caucasian tall guys? Like what would your advice be for them?
I think it would be, and I think partially, I don't know why I attracted those people. I did ask, isn't that ironic? I did ask, and for the tall guys, they had said it made them feel more masculine. They wanted someone who was more petite. I did meet someone who also said they liked Asian women because, and this is kind of a stereotype, that we're a little more subservient, right? Or we listen and we do things. And that's definitely not me. And they learned that very quickly. I'm not that kind of Asian woman. But I think when it comes to dating, and like the tips I would say is like, really know like what you want. What are your non-negotiables? Because height, for example, is a negotiable for me, right? Um, and also take time to think, like you said before, is how does family fit in? So like it could work where, like, when I was in college, I dated someone for the first time, and like it's so weird because you watch all these K dramas, right? I don't know if like your audience does, but you get into the notion of like Prince Charming, right? That this guy is going to come in, he's going to be perfect. And I grew up with that, and my mom raised me to be a feminist, which is kind of like conflicts a little bit with the K drama idea. But so when I got to college, it was really interesting because one of the first guys I dated was literally like Prince Charming. Like he came from a very affluent family, a very well-connected family. Um, and like we clashed a bit because I come from like a different socioeconomic background. And obviously he being like white was also different, but it was interesting. He spoke Chinese, which was different. And like he met my mom and he was like talking to her in Chinese, and he really impressed her. And, he was very chivalrous. We would argue about opening doors. I'm like, I'm capable of opening my own door. He's like, no, but you have to walk through. I open doors. Like, this is what we do. And so, again, that has to do with like how you're brought up a little bit and how that'll clash a little. But I remember after he left, like my mom had cooked for us in college, and my mom's like, he's a really nice guy. And she's like, it's not going to work out. She's
Why
like,
did she say that?
and she would do this a lot too. I felt like my mom would be like would have the prophecy of dooming every relationship I was in. But she said that because she's like, and we'd actually kind of, in some way, kind of met his parents before too, through an event. And she's like, we're not the same people.
Oh,
And
right.
she's like, even if you guys did work out and his family were to accept you, partially being that you're Asian and he's not, and they probably prefer someone of their own race, um, and of the same background, she was like, you wouldn't be happy. And she's like, his mom is not happy, right? You don't, she's like, I don't see you as the person who likes to be like a doll or like a jailed bird. And she's like, and that's kind of what you would be in his family, because you would be in charge of, like, he doesn't want a working wife, for example. And he did say that, like, hey, before you meet my parents, you're gonna need to know how to cook. And I'm like a freshman in college, May. Like, I'm like, what? And I did know how to cook some, but definitely no Western dishes, really. And so my mom was just so honest about it. And she's like, he's a good guy. It's just not going to work long term. You wouldn't be happy. And I'm really grateful she said that. And we naturally drifted apart and stuff like that. And I wished him well. But it was interesting because I hadn't thought that far before. And I think she was just trying to save me from heartache down the line. But I mean, that was one. Had another Caucasian guy too, and he was military. Again, very, like, I don't know, they're very tall and strong, and you just feel like, oh, this is exactly the type of person, blonde hair, blue eyes, I'm supposed to meet. But then it's again like you get what you get, and you start to realize as you meet the people you thought you wanted, that wasn't what you wanted. And that was the most interesting thing. And he was very exciting, life of the party, very different from me. And but it was really interesting in that he wanted to change. And he's like, and I told you I'm an introvert, right? And I would meet a lot of extroverts. And I always felt so guilty going, like, being with someone that was extroverted, because on the weekends I just like to stay in with a movie. I just want to stay in and make some popcorn and just like chat or relax. And they are typically the life of the party, literally, and their friends are waiting for them to show up. And I would like occasionally try to go out with them, but it was really, really hard for me as like an extreme introvert, and I'm less introverted now. But I feel like that was also something that played into it, was like, I just don't want to take away from who they who they are and who they want to be at the end of the day. And so I think that was the other thing, is like, know what you want, and know like what kind of person you're going to feel comfortable with, because it's I think it's that notion or that dream of fantasy of who you think you want to be with. It doesn't actually always pan out. And I think the sooner you get through that, you get closer to figuring out who you really want to be with. There's a really funny movie I was watching with my husband. It's Charlize Theron and I think Seth Rogen. I can't remember the name of the film. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
It's like she's a presidential candidate and he's like this comedian writer, a lot of satire, and she's like this all put together. And I mean, even just seeing Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen, you can tell they're mismatched to a
Yeah,
degree.
yeah.
But I think I would almost challenge people to say, like, hey, if you're meeting the same guys every time or same girls every time, switch it up. You might not know what you need. If you're getting what you want, but it's not working out, maybe you need to change and, try something different.
I feel like everyone should date guys that aren't their type because they just won't know. And I think that's why people hire a matchmaker is we match them with the key life values that really matters. And who cares if he's 1 inch or 2 inches shorter than your ideal? Because I've never in the 14 years that I've been doing this, not one woman has said, you know what, my husband is amazing. He is so good to the kids. He's a great father. He's a great husband because he's tall. Like nobody has ever said, my husband is amazing because he's tall, right? Like, I just
Yeah.
feel like women who really want to have a family, who really want to have kids and, get to their second chapter in their life, they just need to get away from all these superficial things like, oh, I'm a big pickleball player. I want a guy that also plays pickleball. It's like, who cares? Like
They can learn,
you can learn or you can do different
find a
things.
new hobby.
Yeah, and you can hike together or go biking or you learn how to bike or whatever that may be. Like those things are so not important. So yeah.
And I would offer a tip for people because I would see this a lot with like some of my friends who struggle to find, I guess, people to date is ask questions. I think like a lot of people go into dating and they talk a lot and they don't do enough listening and asking questions. And I feel like that can make a big difference in terms of who you attract, and also coming across as more attractive as well. And so like if I think if women can look past certain things, like you said, what like height is a big one. Um, I would say sometimes the socioeconomic plays into women's factors as well, right? And my dad taught me something with that. He's like, when it comes to looks and with money, he's like, I don't want you to suffer, right? When you're married one day, but when you pick someone, just pick someone who is willing to suffer with you or suffer for you. And like there's a Chinese saying which is like to eat bitterness, and that's kind of what it means, is to eat bitterness. Because like if you guys really fall on hard times, right, if they're wealthy and they've never worked a day in their life, they're not going to know how to dig your family out of that. But if you have someone, and my husband worked like delivery, I think, in like restaurants for a little bit in grad school, who has done that stuff, can do menial labor stuff, then that's someone I'd rather see you with, is that they would be able to put down their pride to provide for your family. I think the other one was my dad also said, I don't care what color they are. They could be blue for all I care. And it's really interesting because like we're an Asian family and usually race does come into it. But he said, as long as they treat you well, that's the most important thing. I don't care about any other factor as long as they treat you well. And so I think those two factors were met when he met my husband. And so it was still fine.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now, how has finding your partner enable you to accomplish your other goals? I know you have two businesses and which is very similar, your business in college admissions and helping people match their college, kind of like what I do, match people with their
Yes.
significant others. But tell me about that. Like, how has finding your partner enable you to thrive in your other parts of your life?
When I was dating, and I was fortunate to not have trouble finding people to date. Um, it always felt like it came with so many restrictions. Like if I was busy doing something I wanted to do one weekend and I couldn't meet up, then that was like a big deal for someone I would be dating, and like, oh, I should come first, or we should be meeting as much as possible. And like the fact that I wanted to help students, or the fact that I wanted that I was, doing my hobby of singing or whatever, that just wasn't as important until I met my husband. And he knew I was super busy all the time. He tells me still, he's like, you're a workaholic, and I've learned to accept it. But he supports it, right? And he's like, I know these things make you happy, and I would never want to take away or limit what makes you happy. And so that's a big thing, is like that freedom he gives me. I don't think everybody has with their spouse. The other thing is like I used to work in corporate, and being able to get married and like being together, he was like, hey, if you're unhappy and you want to do your own thing, he's like, go do it, right? Like I can support us, and you go figure this out. Like because we didn't have kids at the time, and I could take a venture and try my own thing, right? And without this pressure of like, oh, I have to bring in like this steady income right away. Even now, he's just very forgiving. He knows I'm like figuring things out, but it makes me happy. And so I think like if you're someone I think I'm a bit strong-willed and strong-headed, and you need that from your partner, find someone that supports you in that. Like when I come up with a crazy idea, he's going to be like, okay, so maybe watch out for these things, but yeah, go do it. Right. So I think that was a big thing that most people like the difference I think between the people I dated. He's like, have you ever just thought I was the first normal person you dated? And I was like, no, but that would be weird if like most of the population is not normal. But it was just simply that he supported letting me do whatever thing I wanted to do. And that varies. So right now it's not singing, right? Sometimes I want to try art or it's entrepreneurship or whatever, but having that support is so meaningful and helpful.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Support is it just causes less stress in your life, right? Like you're not as stressed out if your partner is behind you and supportive and caring. And that's another thing that women and men probably don't say, I need someone who's supportive when they're going through
Mhm.
their list of things that they want in a partner. But once you experience positive support versus negative support, you will realize support is huge. It is. It really is. Now, what are 3 things you love about your husband?
Oh, that's such a great question. Um, I think one is that he is supportive and lets me do whatever I want. Not everybody does that. Like he's someone that like if he wants to do something, he'll come and quote unquote ask for permission. I need to work on this part. I'm not an ask for permission kind of person. I just like do it and tell him and say like, "Hey, heads up, I'm going to be doing this." So I think the other thing would be that he is a great communicator and listens. We talked about this how like for both of us, we are in a relationship that we don't fight. All relationships before for him and for myself, we would fight with the people we were with. And I think part of it is, and I think this is important for women or men before you meet someone, is be confident in yourself. So I used to self-sabotage some of my own relationships and not realize it. But I think like being able to be honest with myself when we go into challenges or issues, I can just I can apologize readily. It's not something that's difficult for me. And I think the other thing we avoid when we talk, and he taught me this, is when we fight clean and fair, no character assassination. So I like that part of us is I value that. And I think the last part, like I said before, really is family. The fact that his family treats me like I'm family. And that's a big thing for like I don't know if this is across all cultures, but in Asian culture especially, we tend to like be very blunt and honest in our culture. If you're getting fat, they will tell you you are fat. But like for my in-laws, like so when they say or people say, "Oh, your daughter-in-law is so blah 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 or so great," they will also praise me. And my husband was saying, he's like, "Believe me, that truly is a compliment because my parents don't say anything they don't mean." So I think the fact that his mother, like, and I get along so well. We're very, very similar people. I joke all the time. I'm like, you married your mother. Like, I didn't realize that at the time. We're very opinionated, strong women. But I think that's the other thing is like that our families, like we treat each other's families like true family. There is no distinction with in-laws and things like that.
I love it. I love it. What would he say about you that what do you think he loves about you?
Gosh, I I honestly don't know. I try asking him sometimes. And like one time, I think one time he said like men don't work like that. He's like, we just know if we do love someone, we don't need reasons for loving someone. I think he does love that I do apologize so easily. He's like, I think our relationship works as well as it does, and we don't fight because you readily accept blame when it is your fault. And we can have those honest conversations. And then he's like, you need two people to fight. So, like, if you have ended the conversation with an apology and you're not being defensive, then I can't possibly engage in that. And so we can be productive of how we move forward. I think the other thing he might say probably is that I don't think he both loves and hates this. I don't have a good filter. And it makes for an entertaining time with me, I'm sure. He's like, "Hey, maybe you want to approach this situation a little differently." Not everyone, but I think he does find humor in it as well. Sometimes when I don't see things the way he does, he's like, "You just keep digging a hole, Anna. Just you got to stop." So I think partly that, and I think the fact that I am so ready to dive in and try new things because he's very risk averse. So we kind of balance each other out in that way as well. Is like I keep him on his toes in that regard, and get us moving forward and doing things that he might not try on his own.
I love it. I love it. One of the reasons why I love my podcast is I get to talk to people all the time. And as I'm talking to you and you're talking about apologizing readily and takes two people to fight, I always think about my own relationship as I'm interviewing the guests and how I could do things better in my marriage. And of course, I will try to take that advice because, yes, I do apologize, but probably not as quick as I could. And I hate fighting. I hate fighting with my husband.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Even when we make up, you still feel like that former fighting energy in the relationship until it takes, a day or two for you to get back to normal, right? So I
Right.
hate fighting. And a lot of it is how I respond to things, which I've learned to actually not respond in a way that's gonna make us fight. So you're right, like, to
Mm.
apologize quickly, sincerely, and just move on, and it doesn't cost you anything to apologize, right? You just wanna make things better and to not get to that fighting level, so I totally get it. Now before I let you go, Anna,
Mhm.
what is any last words you have for advice for people out there or anything we kinda touched upon that we didn't elaborate? I'm gonna give you the floor for a few minutes before I
Oh,
let you go.
that's a great question. I think to stay open-minded, and to have fun. I mean, I didn't like my worst dating story was like someone actually went through my phone while like in my bag while I was in the bathroom. Um, and like at the time I was like, this is totally absurd. I'm like, this is totally the end of the date too. And I totally don't want to continue with this. But I think it's just having an open mind. Because you never know who you're going to meet, right? Like I meet people so randomly, like anywhere from I do this a lot. I make assumptions about people and get into random situations. But like from like dodging a bad situation and like literally walking up to someone's table at a club and saying like, "Hey, can you pretend to be like hanging out with me because I don't want to talk to this other person?" to like trying like speed dating or I forgot the other types of dating I've tried too before that because there was a lot back in the 2000s, I guess, when I met my husband. But I think it really is just having that open mind and tweaking your checklist slightly, or maybe going with no list at all. And then really figuring out, like, because I think for my husband, I wouldn't have found him if I'd worked off my checklist. And also to have faith. Because when I met him, he's like, I'm looking for something serious. And I really wasn't because I'm a few years younger than him. And but I told him and I responded, I said, I am open to it. So, I wasn't, it's not something I'm saying like I'm signed up for, but I'm open to it. And I think that was the most ironic thing was like going from saying like, I don't want to be married by 35 to getting married before 30 simply because I met the right person that satisfied certain needs that I needed versus wants. So that's what I would recommend to people is like having an open mind when they go into the dating experience.
Yeah, and just not put so much pressure on themselves to
Mhm.
they're not going on a first date in their wedding dress, they're just going on a first date to have fun, right? Like, just
Yes.
open-minded. I totally agree, I totally agree. Well, Anna, thank you so much for your insight. I love it. Nice talking to you about all this. And thank you for being so honest and open minded and sharing with us. I will put all of your contact information below in case anybody out there needs help with their college admissions or the Journey 180 program that you have and self help stuff. And I love all that. I feel like if we just all find ways of try to better ourselves, whether it's through a therapist or through, self-help books or a seminar that you attend, like you just never know who you're going to meet. And for men out there, women love these self-help courses and love these seminars. Like if you want to meet women who are wanting to improve themselves or wanting to learn stuff, like there's probably like 90% women at these seminars and
yoga
stuff.
retreats or meditation retreats. Yeah, if you want to meet women, you'll find them there.
Yes,
right?
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for
Thank you,
joining
Jen.
us and joining in on this Asian dating podcast. And if you are single, ladies, please go to my website at 2asianmatchmakers.com. Fill out a profile with me so I know where to find you and set you up with great men out there, successful men, accomplished men, educated men, like great guys. So anyway, thank you so much, Anna, for your time. And I will see everybody later. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.